Perfect. Well, Randy, thanks for joining us today in the first interview that we're going to do from 25 Friday ever. So after meeting you in the Mind Product Conference in London, I think we had some interesting chats, and my colleague Sebran sadly had to leave before. But I think we touched upon some similarities in the things that we do. So let's maybe start with a short introduction of 25 Friday by Sebran, what we do, and then we pass the ball to you. So you
Sounds
can.
good.
Yeah, let's take it away. We are consultants at 25 Friday. 25 Friday is an Amsterdam-based company with a focus on product management consultancy and nearshore development. And that's how we ended up in London and met you.
and and I'm a consultant as well. I work with product leaders and product teams and executive leaders on how to work better together, how to develop their teams, how to develop better products faster. But I don't do any of the development myself.
No. Luckily, we also don't. But we do have developers in Portugal that help us out on that aspect. Also, our main focus area is on scale-ups and startups. I think 25 Friday now has about 20 plus scale-ups and startups that we help. And your focus is, I think, a little bit more on corporate size. Is that correct?
Usually from scale up and up. Yeah, it's usually problems that companies have when they start to grow a little bit more. So around communication, collaboration, prioritization at scale. It's the type of thing that comes when you have more than a few people around a table. So startups less often, although occasionally.
Yeah. Well, it's our main bread and butter. And after I basically saw your video clip about the 4Ps, of which we're going to talk a little bit more about in a bit, I immediately thought like, yeah, this is something that we encounter at startups and scale-ups the whole time. But I can only imagine the complexity of the problems with this scope at corporate size. So maybe you can take us through the 4Ps that we just coined.
Sure. So, everybody has a model, right? And everyone has different models in product with the letter P in them. But I was thinking of four things that were really important that I saw again and again. And really, this is more my mental model, how I think about things. So when I'm meeting people, when I'm coaching them, I tend to categorize things this way. Doesn't mean it's the only way of doing it, but it works for me. So the first thing I look at is are at priorities and understanding, do people know what to work on? What's the most important thing? And by contrast, also what is not the important thing to be working on at the moment. So that's really key, making sure people are working on the right thing. Then making sure you have the right people, the right organizational structure with the right permissions to actually go ahead and do that work. That's really critical. It's impossible to do the work if you don't have the right people to get it done. But if you have, what to do and you've got the people, then it's absolutely critical that you get out of their way and that you give them processes that enable them to deliver value rather than just to do more bureaucracy. And for the longest time, I thought it was just those three things. If you know what to do, you've got the people to do it, and you've got the right way of doing it, then it's going to go great. But that didn't always solve everything. And I finally realized the fourth P, the thing that's most important to me, and it's fourth not because it's last, but because it's fundamental and is the underlying thing for everything else, is does everyone, especially across different parts of the company, do they share the same perceptions of those things? Do they agree on what the priorities are, that you have the right people to do it, and that the processes are working for them? And it's only when you are able to manage that, when you've got people rowing in the same direction, that you're really going to make some progress on it, which is yet another P, but we'll stick with the four.
Thank you. The Agile Manifesto is actually centered around another P. A lot of P's actually, but I think in the center they have people over process. Should we take the Agile Manifesto into regard when discussing your four Ps?
I love the agile approach to things, the idea that you're iterating and learning as you go, that you are concentrating on the things that really matter really resonates, and I think it's incredibly important. But there's a huge distinction between the stuff I'm talking about and the Agile Manifesto. Sometimes people think that agile as an approach is a way of running a company. And in fact, it was written by developers as a way to build things more efficiently. But what I'm talking about is not just how to build, but it's deciding what to build and how to work together. So I think they do go hand in hand, but I think they're four different things.
And if you talk about, well, you already coined it, value. Basically, product people, we're always looking for value. How can we make sure that our customers or end users get the most out of the products that we build? So basically,
Yes.
how we build from the Agile Manifesto, and then how do we represent value in that? How can we make sure that's a central consideration?
Yeah, we have a fundamental problem in a lot of things in the way we measure the value of development teams and product and development teams. I'm going to use interchangeably here, and that's, a lot of times we talk about engineering metrics like efficiency or velocity, and velocity is completely misrepresented the way we measure it. Velocity is something that when we talk about velocity, we're talking about how many story points people achieve, and that's just speed. And speed doesn't mean you're going in the right direction. If you remember your basic physics, velocity is not speed; it's a vector. It's speed in a specific direction. So you can go really fast in the wrong direction and have a great velocity, and it delivers no value to your customers and no value to your company. So the important thing is, how do you ensure that you as a whole, that the company as a whole is working to deliver value? So first you have to know what that is, and you have to have a North Star metric. You have to have a definition. What is the thing that we do that is both useful, gives value to our customers, to our users? Why, from a jobs to be done perspective, what is the problem they are hiring us to solve? Is it efficiency? Is it happiness? Is it regulatory? What is the thing that is most important, and that they will consider it successful for having used the thing that we provide? And then from our side, how can we do that in a way that's efficient enough that we are going to generate, assuming it's a commercial enterprise, that we're going to generate profit? Obviously, you can do this for nonprofits, for governments, for NGOs, for things like that. So the commercial value will not be the measure there. But just to make things easier, we'll stick with the commercial side. So how can we do this in a profitable way that encourages people to buy it from us? And until you know that, it doesn't matter what you're building. You have to figure out the things that are going to help you accomplish that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that's a very good segue into the first P, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
It's
How
amazing how that happens.
Yeah, how do you effectively balance those priorities, and especially in a dynamic market environment?
There's no simple answer to this one. We're product people, so we'll probably say it depends about
Yeah.
70 times today. But it really does depend. The really key thing here is that you make a decision. It may be wrong, but make a decision, concentrate on one thing or a very few things that you're trying to do at once. John Cutler is really good about talking about limiting work in progress. And the idea is, if you've got everybody asking for their thing because they think it's the critical thing, and you're trying to do it all at once, you're very rarely going to get very far forward. So it's picking the thing that you're placing a bet on. And there are lots of different ways of doing it. One of my favorite ways is the idea that Jeff Patton talks about in story mapping and journey mapping, of thin slicing and picking a very specific group of people for who you are solving a problem at that point. Defining your customer segment or your ICP or whatever terminology you want to use really specifically, and say, we're not solving this for everyone. Not at first. We're going to solve it for somebody and prove that this works well. And once you've done that, then you can expand your segments, expand your market, do it for others. But trying to do everything for everyone all at once is it's asking for problems, and too many companies, too many organizations have lots of different people who believe that their customer, that their segment is the most important, and you're trying to satisfy too many things at once. So thin slicing is my favorite way of prioritizing, but it, like I said, it depends. Whatever the right way is for you, the important thing is that you have made a decision, you understand it, and that people are not actively working on the things that are not important right now.
We are slowly moving towards the people part of the product environment. Randy, what strategies would you recommend for fostering a collaborative and effective product team?
Um, so we talk a lot about giving teams autonomy, and I think a lot of times we don't understand what that actually means. So the idea being that I don't really care within your team how you operate, as long as different product managers are different dev teams are different, they have different skill sets and personalities and experiences, same with research and design and stakeholders. um, I'm not really concerned with who's got which responsibilities within the team or across a product team. The point is that for the problems that you're trying to solve, you have people that are working well together, that they have the permission to do it, um, and that they fully understand what their responsibilities are, and that they're proactively communicating with others when they change their mind, when they make a decision, or when they learn something that might affect other people and other teams. That's the really critical thing there. So um, I have a different definition of a product team than most people have. Most people will say, it's a product manager, a dev lead, a design lead, and enough devs, QA, whoever else to work on something. And to me, that's just a group of people that's going to generate a bunch of code, get it into production, and hopefully make it look pretty. And to me, that's not a product. That's just shipping stuff. Ultimately, what you want to do is, as we said with the earlier on around prioritization, is you want to ensure that you are shipping value to customers and realizing it. So you have to measure the right things and all that. So my definition of a product team is four things. It's a group of people who can ask a question, get the answer, so discovery usually, but knowing what question to ask has to do with the prioritization and the strategy. Like I said, get the answer, understand the answer, which is also really critical. Lots of times we get information in but don't really understand it or have the tools to understand it. And then finally, make a decision or take an action based on that understanding. So that's permission, that's collaboration, that's teamwork, that's autonomy and experience. All of those things are really critical. It has nothing to do with who's showing up at stand up or who's a line manager or who's taking Jira tickets. It means that, go to market and sales and marketing and support and whoever else are all part of your product team, because without them, you're not realizing value. You're not necessarily doing the end to end customer experience. So that's the really, really critical thing. Until you have a group of people in a room, at least at kickoff and at retros, and having good check-ins on a regular basis, who can make sure that you can answer all those questions affirmatively, then you don't really have a product team. So for me, people is really about ensuring that you've got all of that there, and then you can do the work that you need to do.
Right, right. But isn't having people not the starting point of the need for processes to ensure that those people keep communicating and working in an effective way?
Yeah, absolutely. So you get to that next point. I mean, it's easy enough when it's 6, 8, 12 people around a table where you can all talk to each other. That two pizza team kind of ideal. Everyone fitting in one room, kind of ideal. That's easy. You don't really need a whole lot of process then. But now you've got 3 teams, you've got 5 teams, you've got multiple products, you've got multiple divisions, you're in different time zones, in different offices, things like that. All of a sudden, you need processes to help collaborate and coordinate and to make decisions at scale. And that's really, really hard. And too often we put in a lot of complicated processes. I've spent time, and I know I've coached lots of people, work with lots of people who spent half their day just reporting and communicating with different stakeholders and trying to ensure that they're creating a good environment for their team. And that's great. They're doing a wonderful job. They're doing the right thing. but they're not spending enough of their time on developing value and shipping things. They're spending too much of their time just communicating and storytelling and saying the same thing over and over and doing process for the sake of process. So what's the idea? How can you design things so you have minimum viable process, not minimum viable product, minimum viable bureaucracy, minimum viable process? What's the least you can do to be effective and do everything you need to do? And that's hard. It's really hard. It's getting rid of meetings. It's changing meetings to email or Slack or updates. It's writing week notes. It's a lot of different things, and it's different in every environment because every company has different traditions. There's different languages. There's different challenges. There's different ways of working. So it's not a single process. It's not a template that you can follow, but it's at every stage asking, what are the problems that we're facing right now? What's taking lots of time? Is there a better way that we can do this? And if you can, just do it. Find a better way.
Yeah.
And probably if you found it, then ask yourself, are we over engineering this?
Yeah. But this is the agile. This goes back to the agile manifesto really well. People over processes, shipping things over documentation. That's great unless you shipping things is stopping other people from shipping things. So
Exactly.
it's figuring out, how does this scale? How does this work? And this is where product ops and lots of other things come in, but it's just, there are really good delivery managers. There are really amazing operations people. There are lots of things to do, and lots of ways of tackling this, but it is something to pay attention to on a regular basis.
And in terms of bringing it back to our jobs, I kind of get the impression, I'm not sure if that's the same for both of you, that whenever we come in somewhere as a consultant, a lot of this, of the three P's that we touched upon right now, are really specific to how good you are as a product manager, or how good the incumbent is, or how good that they are at doing product. I tend to think that there are some traits in people that will help them be a good product manager. And one of the top traits I would suggest is curiosity. Would you
Yes.
agree?
Yeah. So when I'm hiring, it's been a while since I've been a hiring manager, but when I have been in, and when I advise people, I can teach people frameworks. I can teach people processes. I can teach people terminology and things like that. Tools are easy. I mean, they're hard to master, but they're easy to help equip people and train them with. The things I can't teach them are curiosity and empathy. You have to want to know about other people, and you have to care. And that's something that's a bit more of an innate quality. I think that's something that's really critical for people who are trying to make connections, create a good environment for their team, work well with their team, and communicate and collaborate well with the other teams around them. I think you can be a little more bullheaded and literal about things when you're a startup, but as the organization grows, finding people who both have drive and are collaborative can be a lot more critical. That's it. It takes a mix of people. No one. If you have a whole group of people who are really wonderful connectors but don't have an incredible amount of drive, then you're not going to get very far. So you need a nice mix of personalities to make it all work.
Yeah. What was the most difficult situation you've encountered in that perspective?
There
Well, you
was
don't need.
I mean,
What?
there's so many stories. I mean, it's like a Russian novel, right? Every company has really interesting failure modes and really interesting problems. All successful companies, because things are going well, you get to paper over a lot of those cracks, and people don't complain as much. And the goal is to have things going well, so you don't concentrate on them as much. But when things aren't going quite as well, everything becomes a problem. Um, Really, it comes down to every single time a combination of one of the four things I'm talking about. It's usually around perception and communication, but it's also about the motivations for perception and communication. Why should I care? What's in it for me? Why should I talk to you or consider doing it a different way? What does it matter that this thing isn't working for you? It works for me. It's always worked for me. Why can't you just be more like me? things like that. That happens again and again and again. And understanding people's motivations, why, what's in it for me, why they should want to change, why they should want to be more collaborative, and helping to motivate them to do it. I'm not going to pretend this is easy, but understanding it in the first place is the first step towards getting there.
Yeah, I agree. Now that we reached the topic of perception, how would you manage and influence the perception of stakeholders, especially when it's a little different than the product team's vision?
Sure. So, I had a realization the other day about a slightly different way of presenting this than I had before, and it's the idea of Schrodinger's product team. So you've got the idea, we know if the product team is in the box, if we're the cat, we know if we're alive or dead or at any given point. And I can tell you, I've met lots of product people who feel like they're trapped in a box and about to be exposed to deadly radiation at any second. The problem is we think what we're communicating out to everyone is which state we're in, what we're working on, and what we're the level of progress we're making towards it. The reality is, at best, a lot of our stakeholders have seen a roadmap once a couple months ago. They know what we said we were going to work on or what we were told we had to work on. But we've since done some discovery. We've learned some things. We've made some decisions along the way. Usually, one of those things is it's not going to happen quite as quickly as we had initially hoped or as they had initially hoped it would be. And we assume that they've heard all this, that they're aware of it because we've posted our updates, we've done the reporting, we've done everything we need to do. But the reality is, most of the time, it's not that important to them. They're trying to deal with a lot of other things, and they're not as up to date on our stuff as we would like them to be. So understanding that, they haven't opened the box, they haven't collapsed the wave state, they don't know where the product team is at any given point. The next time they plan to look is around about the time that it's critical for them to make a sale or deliver something to a customer or something like that. They expected this by March and it's mid-February. They're doing a check-in and say, yep, it's ready, right? And if it isn't, then it's a real problem. So changing the way that we communicate. So really understanding, why are people counting on this? We said it's going to be ready in April instead of March, but their bonus is based on delivering things in March. We had better communicate that really proactively, much louder, and understand the effect it's going to have on them and their team, on what they're doing. So we need to get them involved much, much earlier and be really empathetic as to why do they care, what impact is it going to have on them, and not just put it into a routine update, but proactively go out and say, hey, this thing you were counting on, it's going to be a little later than you hoped, or it's going to work a little bit differently than you hoped, and here's why. And I understand what it's going to do to you, so let's work together to see what we can do. Maybe we can cut some of the specs on it, cut some of the functionality so we can do things faster. Maybe there's a different understanding, but understanding their perception of you, how much do they care? What are they paying attention to? What are the best ways of communicating? What effect will it have on them if you make a decision that they're not expecting? That's really critical stuff. And too often we're a broadcast function when we're communicating, not engaging in a real dialogue and a real relationship.
So effective two-way communication is actually key in managing perceptions.
Yeah, creating
Um,
relationships with people, and we don't spend as much time on that as we think we do.
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Um, there's maybe another kind of perception that I was thinking of, and I mean those perceptions that we just discussed are formed and influenced by information and communication, but
Hmm.
on a global level, I mean we are operating internationally, and perceptions are also culturally influenced and very hard to manage in that way.
Mm.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's the same basic message. It's getting a clear understanding of how does what you're communicating affect different markets, and how are different people going to experience it. Um, I once hired somebody in India. We interviewed a number of people, and in interviews, they kept saying, "We did this." And we were hiring an individual contributor, not a team. And we pushed the people and said, okay, well, what was your contribution to this? We really need to, as the interviewing committee in the UK, we needed to really understand what role did you play? What were your contributions? But the communication that they used was very we oriented, and there's nothing wrong with that, except it didn't give us what we needed to make a decision. Um, until one guy came along and told us a story about how he was doing exactly that. And he was talking to a team in Mexico and a team in the States and a team in Hong Kong. And he realized that the words he was using didn't always land the same way, that he could tell that they were not engaging, that, whether it was in real time or afterwards, he got different levels of agreement and follow through with different teams. And he realized if he moderated his language and made the effort to understand the other teams and their cultures, that it made a massive difference. So we almost hired him on the spot. We couldn't get him fast enough because we essentially needed him as a translator between. We weren't traveling to India so on a regular basis. We weren't able to create the relationships we needed and break through some of those cultural things so that they understood us and we understood them. But he was our shortcut to do that. So if you can find individuals who can be local translators for you or help you interpret and create relationships, that's great. Otherwise, investing yourself to get a greater understanding that, there are some cultures where the word no is not said in a service in relationship ever, that it's a real problem. So the word yes doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. Or I worked for a large UK bank, and American colleagues would come over and they'd pitch things, and they'd walk out of executive meetings they say, that went great. And I'd have to explain, no, I don't disagree and you're not wrong. And do not mean that I agree and you're right. They mean, yeah, I disagree and you're wrong. It's just a polite way of saying it, and had to really break it to them. And so these things happen again and again and again.
Yeah, everything is great. Everything is amazing.
What
So
is the thing that I, as an American based in the UK, should know about Dutch culture? What is it that English speakers get wrong about
okay.
Dutch culture all the time?
Don't think we're rude. That's mainly it. I think people will say to us that we're too straight to the point and too direct. We don't beat around the bush. So sometimes that can come across quite harsh to other people.
I'm from New York, so it works really well with me. So
Yeah, and even within the Netherlands, it differs from city to city. Especially in Amsterdam, they say that well, people from Amsterdam are really really direct. If you want to know, you get a no.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we already talked about a little bit of some real world application of your four Ps, but we were also really wondering if there is maybe a scenario or a situation that you kind of like want to highlight the success of the four Ps, maybe a significant turnaround of the such.
Sure. So really, it's kind of the opposite on this. It's every time things have gone wrong for me, it's because I didn't really accurately focus on this. So it was the last time I was in an operational role that I was sitting down and I was having real trouble with somebody. And I'm not going to go into the specific details, but we fundamentally did not agree on things. We did not get along on certain things. And I could not, no matter what I did, I couldn't build bridges. And other people told me, oh, don't worry. This individual's like that with everyone. You'll get along in a couple of months. And I was interim. It was a temporary role. I didn't have that long to get in to build that bridge, and it never ended up working. And in fact, it really, without a couple of other specific people in the business, that individual's relationships drove wedges with other people. We lost some really good people, and we missed a lot of really critical delivery deadlines. And the fundamental nature of the company changed because we lost the people who were covering. Um, so I've put together these 4Ps as a worksheet, as a canvas after that, saying I don't want to ever be in this situation again. And since then I've been sharing it with other people. And there are 3 ways this can work and has helped people. One, and the way it's worked for me best, is just writing it down myself as a simple exercise, taking 10 or 15 minutes when I'm having trouble with someone and I can't, or a situation, and I can't figure out what's going on or how to make it better. Just sitting down and analyzing and looking at this and saying, I have a bunch of questions in this canvas that I ask myself, and usually triggers something. It makes me look at things from a perspective that I hadn't been looking. I'd been looking from a very me perspective instead of from their perspective, and not considering their motivations as early as I should have. Um, I've also done it with my individual teams, with individuals that I work with, and that's helped a lot as well. We talk about it, and we talk about what's stopping us as a team. What are the key stakeholder relationships that aren't working? What is holding us back? What's creating a bad environment? And then I've also done it finally at the leadership level, and say, right, we're not executing as a company as well as we'd like. We're not working together well enough. What is wrong? Let's get a clear understanding of what we all think is wrong so that we can tackle it together. And we may disagree on the things that are the problems, but that's a problem in and of itself. And understanding which of those things and putting some effort into fixing those things makes a massive, massive difference. You may not have, things that you think are going well, someone else may think are going terribly. And getting that out in the open and being able to work with them on it, either correct their impression, give them the information that they need, or change the way that you're interacting with them or your team is interacting with them so they get what they need, goes a long way towards solving it. And that's the thing that's made it work for me every time.
Awesome. It's definitely something that I think I will be bringing along in my work day to day, even more often. Yeah, that's what kind of like took me from the first time I saw you talking about the 4Ps. It was like, yeah, I can definitely use this. I need to use this in my life or professional life, I would say. You.
Yeah. I agree. It's actually a miracle that we haven't heard about it before.
I think, there's nothing new about this, to be honest. It's a different way of expressing it. It's the way that resonates with me. I think we have heard about this before. We've talked about empathy mapping and motivations and assumptions mapping. And there's lots of different ways of doing it. This is just the way that broke through for me and made it work. And I thought it was a nifty way to tell other people. And I've had some people come back, well, quite a few people come back and say really nice things about it, which is great. But I'm not going to pretend, I like to tell people all tools are useless. I'm sorry, all tools are terrible, but some are useful. And this one has been useful for me. And if it works for you, great. I think the concept is really strong, but if the way of applying it doesn't work for you, feel free to change it and adapt it and do what you need. The important thing is that you're thinking about other people, that when you're running into problems, that you're considering other viewpoints, putting on other people's shoes, doing the type of internal discovery and synthesis that you need to do to move forward. That's more critical than using any specific approach.
Sounds like excellent advice for product people.
You can make up your own tools. No one will stop you, I promise.
Maybe we'll find a 25 Friday P somewhere.
Yeah, why not?
So, yeah, Randy, thank you for your time. I just wanted to highlight that we really value your time and talking to us. A summary of key takeaways. What shall we highlight?
I think the cultural sensitivity that you pointed out as a sort of a brilliant skill is one thing to emphasize.
Yeah. Yeah, perception being the foundation,
Sure.
making sure that you hire curious product people.
The one other thing I'd say that's really would resonate with a lot of people, I would hope, is a lot of things with this can be taught, and a lot of times having somebody outside to help can really be a wonderful help. So whether it's an agency like yours, whether it's an independent like me, depending on what you need, sometimes it's getting outside your own head can be really, really helpful. Talking to other product people, to talking to other people who have experience and have perspective on seeing the way other people have done it or have done it before themselves can be really, really helpful. So we've got a really wonderful community. Reach out to me, to the guys at 25 Friday. It's absolutely worth picking up the phone or scheduling a call with any of us to chat through things and see if there's a different way of looking at the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for having this interview with us. Thank you for answering our annoying questions. Please reach out to Randy. You can reach him out. You can reach out to him on Out of Owls. Maybe you want to explain a little bit more about Out of Owls and.
Sure. Out of Owls is my consulting practice. It's me and friends. So depending on what the engagement is, if I can't do it by myself, then I often reach out to some of the wonderful people I know to collaborate with. And it's coaching, training, consulting, and I do some community building as well. If you're a product person who just wants to join a community to learn how to do the job better, I've got a group called Product in the Ether. I have a subscription community for chief product officers called CPO Circles. But you can learn all about these things at outofowls.com. And guys, thank you so much. It's been really wonderful having the chance to chat with you at 25 Friday. Thank you. Really appreciate you inviting me on.
Cool.
It was a pleasure, Randy.
Yeah. So